It is really an honor and privilege to deliver this keynote to such a distinguished audience. I'm also delighted that you chose the beautiful and historic city of Bangkok for your 57th annual meetings. And I thank SET for being such a great host. My sincere appreciation to WFE and to you, Nandini, for extending this invitation to me again. The 56th annual meeting, which I had the pleasure of attending, was phenomenal. And I'm absolutely delighted to join you again this year. As you all may recall, I spoke about partnering to tackle global fragility at the annual meetings last year. Since then, global economic growth has picked up due to firm momentum in global manufacturing and trade, as well as favorable financing conditions and stable commodity prices. Our economists at the bank expect global growth to rise to 2.7% from a post-crisis low last year of 2.4%. It reflects an investment-led growth in advanced economies, a receding of obstacles to economic activity amongst the major commodity exporting developing countries, as well as growth that is robust in the commodity importing developing countries. However, I do not believe that growth in the near term is sufficient to protect the global economy from various risks and shocks. It is neither adequate to address poverty and the extreme inequalities around the world, nor able, in my view, to stem the geopolitical tensions, the populist and anti-globalization sentiments that we are all witnessing around the world. What we need is growth that is sustainable. I've therefore chosen to focus my remarks on what I believe is the important role of stock exchanges in fostering sustainable growth. First, I will define what I mean by growth that is sustainable. I will then outline some elements of the important role of exchanges in fostering a sustainable future. Sustainable growth, in my view, addresses inequalities and climate risk, the world's two most important challenges. It leverages potential opportunities, notably demographic patterns and emerging technologies, and protects the global economy from risks and shocks. Such growth, in my view, ensures a safe and stable financial system and promotes a secure world. Sustainable growth addresses inequalities by being inclusive. This point was made by the governor of the Central Bank of Thailand yesterday in his special address. In other words, inclusive growth benefits everyone, everywhere, not a few in only certain places. It is one that fosters an enabling environment for equal opportunity so that people are not resentful of others within their countries or across borders, as we're seeing around the world. Growth that results in, as Oxfam reported at the beginning of this year, 8 men owning the same wealth as 3.6 billion people, half of the world's population, cannot be sustainable. The importance of tackling climate risk has become even more apparent to us in the last few weeks, whether it's the floods in Bangladesh, in the Caribbean islands, in India, in Nigeria, in Sierra Leone, in the United Kingdom, in the US. Sustainable growth is also one that focuses on the key demographic patterns, including the consumer preferences of millennials and youth, as 50% of the world's population is currently under 30 years of age. Such growth recognizes that the influence of young people can only get stronger as they make up an increasing proportion of the global workforce and voter base. Similarly, sustainable growth is one that focuses on the opportunities offered by emerging technologies such as driverless cars, robotics, machine learning, 3D printing, and blockchain that will continue to be disruptors for entire sectors of the global economy. In September of 2015, world leaders agreed on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which they expect will lead to a sustainable future by 2030. At the World Bank Group, our twin goals of ending extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity enables us to focus on sustainable growth. The three ways in which we expect to get there is by inclusive growth, that is facilitating infrastructure and private sector investments, investing in human capital, and helping our clients build resilience against global shocks. Asia, in my view, offers several lessons on ways to foster sustainable growth. For example, Thailand since 1986 has reduced the number of Thais living on or below, at or below the national poverty line by 88%. Let me now turn more specifically to the role of exchanges in fostering sustainable growth. Last year, you may remember that I indicated that exchanges and market infrastructure entities are agents of social change. They're indeed critical to sustainable growth, given their global influence. They're the epicenter of capital flows, and as a marketplace, mobilize savings that finance key government projects, as well as new businesses and business expansions, which in turn create jobs and provide key products and services, as previous speakers have noted. Exchanges and market infrastructure entities provide transparency, full disclosure of information, liquidity, operational speed, and accuracy, factors which efficient and well-functioning markets are built on. I was delighted to see that the market cap of entities that are members of, that are listed on exchanges that are members of WFE today make up a market cap of more than $74 trillion, and that there are almost 50,000 companies that are listed. It shows that exchanges are visible symbols of most economies. Futures and options and other derivatives also enable us manage various forms of risk, also crucial to managing risk in economies. Historically, as has been noted earlier, exchanges have been associated with pioneering initiatives. During the 19th century, the only source of funding for the British railway network was via securities that were listed on the London Stock Exchange. Numerous studies have shown that countries with robust capital markets grow faster and produce higher and more equitably distributed incomes for their citizens than those dominated by the banking sector. For example, a 2014 study by the Alternative Investment Management Association estimated that growing combined stock and bond markets by 1/3 could increase long-term real growth in per capita GDP by 20%, as capital markets allow for more efficient allocation of capital across industries. The potential of capital markets to fuel sustainable economic growth cannot be emphasized. Funding solutions to the world's key challenges will need to harness a significantly larger portion of the world's investment capital. Changing the direction of these flows to more socially and environmentally sustainable areas can create new opportunities to earn higher returns that currently don't exist in the low-interest environment that we continue to see in most advanced economies. For example, it is estimated that approximately $26 trillion is currently invested in low-yielding government securities around the world, with almost a quarter earning at most zero or negative yielding or negative rates. repurposing even a small percentage of these investments each year will have a significant impact, in my view, on our collective future, particularly through your institutions who are positioned as the center of the global capital flow infrastructure. As technology and innovation are intricately linked to your business models, exchanges, in my view, are well positioned to adopt various emerging technologies timely. History has shown that companies that have the highest market cap will be those that have led the disruptions of various sectors of the economy. If you compare, for example, the companies, the top 10 companies that were listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 1980 to the ones that are listed today, I can make that point. In 1980, there were 7 oil companies, IBM, AT&T, and GE, that made the top 10. Today, the companies are Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan, and Bank of America. In other words, 5 technology-oriented companies, including 3 that didn't even exist 23 years ago, are the top 10 by market cap on the New York Stock Exchange. You therefore have many reasons to focus on driverless cars, drones, robotics, machine learning, 3D printing, Hyperloop, blockchain, and all of the other interesting names for emerging technologies. I believe exchanges can also develop products that target millennials, such that those that respond, and including those that respond to their increasing desire to invest in socially responsible opportunities. And I was told that millennials will probably inherit about $30 trillion from their parents. So it does make good business sense to focus on millennials if you're not already doing so. Not only do members of the World Federation of Exchanges have significant influence over creating a preferred future path to sustainable development, I do believe from interacting with many of you that you get it. The efforts you've put into promoting investments, in my view, sustainable investments, are laudable. According to the study that you jointly sponsored with UNCTAD, the number of UN sustainable stock exchanges has more than tripled in the last year. 38 exchanges now offer environmental, social, and governance indices, and 11 list green bonds. But there is clearly more to do. In the area of sustainable finance, both new products, new applications of existing products are sorely needed to increase the speed and the volume of money flowing into financing a sustainable future. I'm also very happy to note that a number of exchanges are working on adopting the recommendations of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, established by the Financial Stability Board. As you know, they released their final recommendations at the end of June this year. While their recommendations do not promote any position on the climate change debate, it provides, in my view, a neutral framework for disclosing the impact of climate risks on an entity's business. I believe that this approach will enhance decision-making on climate-related risks as it promotes transparency on these material risks and that entities face. Let me end by saying that partnerships are key, and I'm glad that WFE uses that as a hallmark in terms of how it deals and promotes sustainable development, because I don't believe that anybody can do it on their own. I can confirm that, of course, our entire history as the World Bank, our 70-year history in the capital market, has really been successful because of partnerships with all of the exchanges around the world. As the African proverb says, if we want to go fast, we can go alone. If we want to go far, we must go together. Let me conclude by making a few more remarks. First, let me remind us that if we do not urgently focus on working together to build a sustainable future, we could leave more than 60% of the world's poor living in areas impacted by chronic fragility, conflict, and violence by 2030. And they're not just implications for those areas, they're implications for the whole world. They're implications particularly for a secure world. Our goal should be to meet the aspirations of a growing global population, lift people out of poverty, end protracted periods of conflict and violence, and reduce inequalities in ways that are environmentally and socially sustainable. Make no mistake, these are the principal challenges of our times. And I do believe it requires a new mindset from thinking short-term, which most exchanges and the private sector tends to do, to thinking long-term. From redefining success to be more than just profits for shareholders, to a definition that includes the impact that we and our organizations have on society. It requires a focus, a real focus on sustainable growth. In other words, growth that is inclusive and growth that focuses on tackling the world's greatest challenges. Let us be inspired by the life of the late King Bhumibol of Thailand, who was revered by many because of his fortitude and devotion to human development. He said in one of his favorite quotes, "We cannot be alone and still be happy if others around us are suffering. Instead, we should share their suffering and help ease their troubles according to our ability and capability." Indeed, I believe we're all very able and capable in this room because we have significant influence, whether as senior public officials or senior private sector officials. And I believe that we're all agents of change. If not us, then who? If not our entities, then which entities? If not now, when? Thank you.